Yes, and it was a tough interview, a fair but tough interview from George Stephanopoulos, who pushed Biden on multiple occasions, on multiple topics, but also was quite respectful in the way that he was handling quite a delicate situation as well. Joe Biden doubling down on the fact that he had a bad night, saying that he was sick. He said that he had a doctor that was with him give him a COVID test, and ultimately that proved to be negative. And it was a combination of that and exhaustion that was the reason behind his bad debate performance. Now, George Stephanopoulos then pushed him and said, well, you had 12 days between that busy schedule you had in early June and then 6 days of prep at Camp David. Was that not enough time? Joe Biden said that he still was tired despite that long length of break that he had. And then when it came to the neurological issues, George Stephanopoulos also pushed him on that, asking whether he would take a cognitive test and release the results of that. Biden didn't say yes or no. He said that the presidency itself was a cognitive test that he takes every single day. Stephanopoulos also then said whether Biden was more frail now than he was 4 years ago during the last election. Biden said that he wasn't, but I think anybody who was looking at the 2019 debates to the debate that we saw last Thursday would see a marked difference between the Biden that we saw then and the Biden that we see now, which led Stephanopoulos to then ask whether he had the legs to go for the next 4 years. Biden said that he had the legs and that he could just look back on his achievements over the previous 3.5 years of his presidency to prove that he had what it took. So Biden trying to pivot more towards the issues, but Stephanopoulos really kept on that point of his age as well before moving on to the polls. Now, the polls see Biden behind in most of the polls, it must be said. And Biden said that he didn't agree with those polls. So that might be something that some Democrats would find some worry in, whether Joe Biden is in touch with the average voter and what the average voter is experiencing during this election cycle. He was then asked how he would feel if he ignored those polls, continued on to November, then lost and had to see Donald Trump be invested in January. And he said, I'll feel as long as I give it my all and did the best job I know I can do. That's what this is about. However, it must be said, the Democrats that I'm talking to don't really see it that way at all.
Yeah, so will it make any difference then, Fraser, to those who are calling for Biden to step aside?
Well, I think obviously all eyes were on this interview to see whether Biden would be more corpus mentis than he was at the debates that we saw last Thursday. He definitely was more perky and more coherent in his answers with this interview, the unscripted 22-minute unedited interview that we saw. But whether it moves the needle or not, it's difficult to say. I doubt really that it will really move it for many people. And now most people are watching everything that the president is saying and how he's saying it. So even if he does start talking more about his messaging, I think a lot of people will be hanging on his every word to literally see how he's saying those words as well. When you look at Capitol Hill, there are various members of the Democratic Party who are now calling for Biden to step aside. There are now at least 4 Democratic Congress people who are calling for him to step down. And we heard from reports that Mark Warner, one of the senators, was trying to drum up some Senate support to get Biden to step down as well. That was also put to Biden. He said that he wasn't really paying attention to the noise and that he got on well with Mark Warner. Warner himself has not said one way or another whether that reporting is true. And Biden is also trying to double down the Democratic support among governors in the US. He had a meeting with them just a few days ago where they all agreed to support him as well. But the key ones really are going to be the leaders. We're looking at Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, who's the leader of the Democrats in the House, and even old statespeople of the party like Nancy Pelosi. They really could be quite significant voices. So if Joe Biden can convince them that it was an episode and rather than a series of problems, which is what we heard from Nancy Pelosi, that was her concern, then that really could sway the tide. But right now, it doesn't look like this is going anywhere.
We'll see how it plays out. Fraser, thank you so much for that. That is our Washington correspondent, Fraser Jackson.